नमस्ते दोस्तों, आपका स्वागत है मेरे चैनल पर। इसे सब्सक्राइब करें और घंटी आइकन दबाएं।
By the time he was 32 years old, Alexander the Great had conquered the known world, building an empire that stretched from the Adriatic Sea to the edges of the Indian subcontinent. While history remembers him as a legendary conqueror, his early years in the Macedonian court were defined by a constant, desperate struggle for political survival. His education was a form of combat. Under the tutor Leonidas, Alexander underwent relentless physical conditioning, training for years in military tactics and hand-to-hand combat to endure the realities of the front line. Aristotle provided the intellectual counterpart to this brutality. He tutored the prince in logic, medicine, and philosophy, instilling a worldview that saw the entire earth as a singular prize for a sufficiently capable ruler. Alexander proved his potential at age 10 by taming Bucephalus, a horse so wild that even experienced riders refused to mount it. He noticed the animal was afraid of its own shadow, turned it toward the sun, and rode it straight into history. This combination of martial discipline and philosophical grandiosity forged Alexander into a weapon specifically calibrated to outgrow his own kingdom. Alexander's future was threatened when his father, King Philip, married a pure-blooded Macedonian noblewoman named Cleopatra Eurydice. This union meant any son born from the marriage could legally claim the throne over Alexander, who was only half Macedonian. During the wedding feast, Cleopatra's uncle openly insulted Alexander's legitimacy. Alexander responded by hurling a wine cup at the man and fleeing the kingdom with his mother, fearing his father's silence was a sign of total abandonment. He eventually returned to court, but the stability of the crown was short-lived. During a public festival, one of King Philip's own bodyguards stepped forward and stabbed him to death in front of the assembled crowds. At age 20, Alexander was suddenly the king of a fractured nation. He was surrounded by political rivals at home, while the Greek city-states his father had conquered saw the transition as an opportunity for immediate rebellion. Alexander's reign began as a violent necessity. Every action he took was a calculated move to secure a crown that his enemies were already reaching for. To secure absolute power, Alexander executed every potential threat to his throne, including his father's new wife and her infant child. When the city of Thebes rebelled, he leveled the city to the ground and sold the entire surviving population into slavery. This act of total destruction forced the rest of Greece into a state of terrified compliance. With his position at home secure, Alexander marched into the Persian Empire. He carried Aristotle's vision of a unified world, but he was also driven by the practical need to capture Persian treasuries to fund his growing military machine. At Grammatis, Alexander faced a dug-in Persian force. Using a wedge-shaped cavalry assault, he punched through their center line. Leading personally, he survived a brutal axe blow, his frontline presence ultimately breaking the Persian resistance. These early victories established his reputation as a commander who relied on high-risk, aggressive maneuvers to shatter numerically superior forces. When the island city of Tyre refused to surrender, Alexander spent 7 months engineering a massive stone land bridge through the ocean. He turned an island into a peninsula just to bring his siege engines to their walls. In Egypt, he was welcomed as a liberator. The Egyptian priesthood officially recognized him as the son of the god Amun, a title that confirmed his growing belief in his own divine status. At the Battle of Gaugamela, he faced King Darius's full military strength. Despite being outnumbered and facing scythe chariots and war elephants, Alexander's tactical maneuvers forced Darius to flee, effectively ending Persian sovereignty. Following the victory, Alexander burned the palace at Persepolis. As the capital fell, the administrative hub of the Persian world ceased to exist and was replaced by Alexander's new, sprawling authority. After securing the Persian crown, Alexander transitioned from a Macedonian king into an Eastern god-king, demanding his subjects perform acts of ritual prostration that shocked his own Greek generals. He adopted Persian royal dress and habits, attempting to integrate himself into the culture he had just conquered. This shift deeply alienated his Greek officers, who saw his new behavior as a betrayal of their Macedonian traditions. He pushed his army across the Hindu Kush and into India, where he fought a grueling, bloody battle against King Porus. Though he won, the cost in lives and morale was higher than any previous campaign. After 8 years and thousands of miles, his men finally reached their limit. At the Hyphasis River, the exhausted and homesick troops staged a mass mutiny, refusing to march another mile into the unknown. For the first time, Alexander's psychological drive was checked by the physical reality of his army's exhaustion, forcing him to finally turn back toward Babylon. In an attempt to fuse his fractured empire, Alexander held the Susa weddings, where he forced thousands of his soldiers and officers to marry Persian women, hoping to create a singular, unified ruling class. As he aged, his drive turned into paranoia. He executed many of his own governors and previously loyal commanders, suspecting them of corruption or plotting against him during his years in India. He returned to Babylon to plan an invasion of Arabia. Even as he drank heavily in the palace, he remained obsessed with further expansion, refusing to allow his empire to settle into a state of peace. His body finally failed him. After a period of intense illness and high fever, Alexander died at the age of 32. With no clear heir, his generals immediately began fighting over the territories he had spent a decade conquering. Alexander successfully integrated the Greek and Persian worlds into a hybridized civilization that lasted for centuries. Yet the same internal drive that allowed him to conquer the known world was an obsessive force that ultimately left him no room to survive his own success.
Like, comment and subscribe my channel.